Cool. Well, we'll just get going. So if you guys have any questions, just start firing away. Um, or in about 5 minutes, we can just talk about the Bumpy Bone Cell nerf and at least just kind of go through thoughts on that. But do you guys have any initial questions from your side or things that are going on this week or that you're experiencing?
Hey, hello.
Hello.
Hey, I have a question. Since the announcement of the Axie Infinity says like whenever we gift an Axie now to a
Hmm.
Scholar account, like I need to wait from that 24 hours, they cannot earn SLP. So that got kicked in, like it started doing that for the update.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
okay,
So the main benefit behind that though is actually a benefit for you more than anything else. Is it prevents multi-accounting for other managers. Because here's what can happen is if you have do you have scholars right now? I assume you do.
yes,
All right.
yeah,
So you know how
yes, I
you can
have.
make a bunch of Ronin accounts under one seed phrase, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So what you had people doing is they were then making say 5 Ronin accounts under the same seed phrase. They'd play 20 energy in one, then they'd send the Axies to the other to Ronin average number 2, play 20 energy there, then send them to Ronin account 3, play 20 energy there. And so they'd play the same 3 Axies across 5 different accounts or whatever amount of accounts you want to put it as. Uh, and they just kind of were abusing the system. And now they
mm-hmm.
might have even had different devices, but the same Axies were being played for, say, 60, 80, 100 energy when they should have only been played for 20 energy because they only actually owned 3 Axies, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
so now you can get the Axie to a scholar, for example, say they already have a plant beast bird combo and you get them a terminator because they just want one for some reason, um, they can still earn SLP in that account with the plant beast bird. They just can't put the terminator on a team until 24 hours later.
Okay, so it's not like completely they are standstill, but only they cannot use that gifted Axie alone for 24 hours.
Correct. So if you
Okay.
the only real benefit the only real time you got to think about it differently is if you have a brand new scholar, and so say you
Mhm.
move all your Axies over at the very beginning when you're about to make a scholarship, they won't be able to use that for 24 hours. So kind of just when you actually do make the scholarship, that's the only time where it kind of becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just need to plan one day before. Okay.
Yep, or
Okay.
yeah, just as long as you put the Axies in even 24 hours in advance, or once you give it to them, it'll let them know once it's good to go. But yeah, I would just plan for 24 hours to let
Mm-hmm.
them know that. Hmm.
So the 24 hours count is from when you gifted or that entire day resetting you need to happen.
Uh, I believe the intent is from when it's gifted, but I don't know if their servers can handle that right now, so it might only be on daily reset. But I would imagine they're trying to make it 24 hours, so that they don't have it being abused.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, good to know.
Hmm. But I was kind of I didn't quite I didn't know why they were worried about it. I knew the excuse me, I knew uh the gifting hack where people were just gifting the same axes to other Ronins, and that was a problem. Um, but I had another breeder and a scholar manager who has a ton of scholars. He was really excited about the change, and I didn't get it. And he told me is because he didn't want to be flagged as multi-accounting. If he happened to take an Axie off one scholar account, move it to another, they start playing it. It could have been a flaggable event, and now it won't even let it happen. So I think that's a. So he was happy that he's not really going to have a risk of being flagged for multi-accounting.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Um, But yeah, we can talk real quick about the Bumpy Bone sale. All I'll say from my side is I was very surprised. Um, I don't know if you guys know, I own a Mystic Axie, and so I'm in the Mystic Axie chat on the main Discord. And I think a lot of them were surprised too. So I think people aren't disappointed with that it was nerfed because they felt like it shouldn't have generated, endless cards. But at the same time, I would say that everyone was surprised um, that it was nerfed in the middle of a season because it just
Mm-hmm.
felt very off cycle. And even several of them had talked about how they had invested, you know, 2 to 7 ETH in some of the farms to kind of create this combo. And now that it's gone,
Mm-hmm.
they were definitely upset by it. But um, I would say that's definitely not normal. I haven't ever seen them do an update like that for anything like that in the middle of a season. And we were all, I'd say everyone that was in there was mostly surprised that it was done since they just did balance changes, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's mostly invested people. It's a risk, it's a calculated risk. Yeah, but who has been benefited from it already? Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they did say though. I think there is a couple things. Is that they said they were watching the data and they were watching who was playing it, how much it was being played, and the performance of the team that it was being put on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that they were concerned that it could become so big that they wouldn't really be able to turn it off. So while yes, some people did have to take a loss now, they thought it was a better to take a loss now than what it could be in the future. Was what I think it was, but we don't we haven't been confirmed or told exactly what the logic was of doing
Mm-hmm.
it now and why it wasn't just because I also thought if they knew they were going to make the change, why didn't they signal it at the balance change? Say like, hey, we don't want Bumpy Bone Sale to be a thing. It should only activate once for the Bone Sale. We're not we don't have the update ready yet, but we will be updating it in 3 weeks. It would have prevented a lot of uh,
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
extra
Yeah.
breeding. So yeah, so definitely a surprising move. I'm sure it'll be talked about more and some more comments will be made around it. But at the end of the day, it kind of is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very nice.
I'm assuming too, if you are breeding like Bumpy Sponge, will be a similar thing too. As I hear Sponge still works, but obviously they turned off other things. Like they turned off Carrot and Snake Jar a while ago. So
Yes.
I would imagine if Sponge is a thing right now too, you'll see that be turned off in the coming weeks as
Soon,
well.
yeah, I guess. Good. Um, so how's your scholars doing in after the season 19 or the balance changes? Do you think like the SLP earning or the people who was doing previously well, but now like they are being below 1500 MMR, struggling to break that wall of 1500 or 1800
Yep.
with the
So
similar axes?
that's a
Yeah.
great question. So I definitely have better performers now than I did prior. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a couple reasons for that. What I've found, I've had scholars now for almost 5 months. I think it's my longest scholar. And what I've noticed is that once scholars do really well, a couple things happen. Either they um, save that money and bought their own Axie team and they've graduated. So I've had maybe 7 or 8 graduates so far. Um, so some graduate, some just start to buy their own Axies and they continue to perform very highly. Others just kind of become complacent. They made good money. They're kind of still just doing on the side for some extra money, but they're not as into it. Um, and that's kind of seems like the mold for like once you get to after 3 or 4 months. What I will say right now is I still have some people that are relatively high, 1600 plus, that are earning quite well, but not they're not all the same people. I will say for my last 2 months in a row, though, they were the same people. So the last 2 months, my top three have been the same 3 people. But my fourth and fifth best scholar was different, and then my like fifth through 10 was definitely different. And so I think that's partially tied to the teams you're seeing. So this one here is kind of I can zoom in a little bit too, but this one here is like a tri spike mech. Tri-Spike Aqua, but the Aqua has Razor Bite. Tri-Spike Aqua, but the Aqua has Beast Damage. No, it's not Tri-Spike. Those are both Mech, Razor Bite, Aqua. Mech with Aqua with Beast cards. It's kind of a standard plant mech bird. And so again, this is kind of a really good sign to me because this is one of my most common teams. To see them performing at almost 1700 MMR is really good. Um, but I have a lot of the same mech, and so usually the changer is kind of from there, like the bird or something else like that too. So, but this is kind of my standard comps that I've been running, and they've all been pretty consistent. I've had some over 2,000 before, and So right now, seeing a good amount, still above 1,200, but I definitely have some that are below. But it looks like it's also, um, oops, it looks like some of them just don't really care because if you go down to my worst scholars, this guy has almost the exact same team as that as the second best performer or third best performer, and same with him. So Um, doesn't make sense that they'd be as low. This guy actually has almost the exact same team that was, even with the Leaf Bug. So doesn't make exactly sense as to why they're as low as they are. I'm attributing a lot more to the person, and I've had now conversations with all of them about, hey, like we need to work on improving this, or I'm just going to pull your scholarship. So kind of these three are the ones that are on the chopping block right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I have like one other question, like what is the mindset of manager needs to be like? For example, season 18, some axes did well, but after the changes, season 19, they did not do well. So the managers need to keep on changing the axes, or at least one axis changed for the team, for them to just improve the earnings or the MMR rankings. So it's like each season, like they need to concentrate on updating the existing scholars, or do you think like still they can means get the new scholars, keep on adding them, but
So
that's
I
why I was a
haven't.
little bit.
No, it's a good question. So I haven't adjusted any of my teams. I have a few spare Axies sitting around. Um, in this account here, they're mostly plants because I'm just waiting for other Axies to put on teams. Um,
Mhm.
so I have these just kind of sitting here that I'm like, hey, if you ever want to swap an Axie, you can look at this account and grab an Axie if you want it. But otherwise, I really haven't changed any of my buying habits. Like I'm not going to buy Arco Mechs. I'm not going to buy a Poison Team. I'm not going to buy Antenna Cute Bunny. I've kind of kept everything to standard builds because I'm also building for the future. I'm not just trying to build for now, and there's an important differentiation there. Um, I really think V2 is going to be a huge game changer for the way the Axie ecosystem works and the way you use your Axies. And that's partially in how you're going to battle with them in V2. It's also especially how you're going to use them in land gameplay. So for me, I've been leaning towards pure Axies kind of consistently. Maybe a few alterations on the ears here and there, but for the most part, I lean really heavily into pure Axies. And so um, I believe that as you get to land play, pure Axies are going to have a nice benefit that we're not talking about enough right now because as soon as they launched Ronin, partially because they had some auto breeders for 100% pure Axies, they added mutations. And I think mutations, if you really think about it, is the team super forward looking, saying like we have V2, we have all these benefits to super pure Axies. We need to add a sense of randomness when you're going for purity, so it's just not automatic. Once you get 100% Axie, it's guaranteed to be 100% baby. They didn't want just printers, and so I think again that takes a lot of foresight on the team because they launched Ronin with less than a million Axies. I mean, so that was really that's a long time ago in the Axie genealogy that they created mutations. And so I think there's a lot to be said there for that. So for me, I've been leaning a lot into purity and having kind of solid teams with a nice diversity of moves. So energy stealer gain, um, a backdoor move potentially with like Little Owl or a double talk to get under shields, high damage cards. I didn't lean as heavily into zero cost as you see currently in the meta. We'll see how that plays out in V2, and they might be the wrong call, but at the same time too, like that's kind of how I built my team and my ecosystem. I can't say 100% is the right way. It's just really a way. But right now it is the way that I've created my scholars. And so again, I really haven't adjusted much. I didn't do much into the double aquas. Um,
Mhm.
I've done more into semi tankier with like either more reptiles and plants, and kind of playing different things with that there as well. But I will say, um, was there as well. I did a lot of like where you basically had one from each tree. So you have a plant or a reptile, you have a beast or a bug, and you have an aqua or a bird. Because I think that again, Axie made the game to be that way. So I'd imagine as you pivot to V2, there's going to be, I would assume there's going to be more synergy around all that. But It's high,
Mhm.
that's a highly speculative position that I'm in. It's just usually it's for me it's leaning off of the items and seeing what the items say, and a lot of the items for land give benefits to pure Axies. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely makes more sense. Yeah, it's people. Yeah, people. A lot of people buys for how the current season it's doing, or they need to think about a little bit of V2 too. Like, yeah,
so
just to
yeah,
have
so
that risk. Yeah.
I would say if I were to build scholars today,
Mm-hmm.
I would buy a team that makes sense in the long run, that has really good continuity and synergy throughout. So like I helped another gentleman make some new scholar teams, and we did some plant-based birds, but I also did like a cute bunny antenna team because they weren't that expensive, that it wasn't a very huge risk. But I still think cute bunny antenna should work. Like it shouldn't be. I think right now it's actually a little bit broken. It might become different where they only do cute bunny for one turn, or fear for one turn, or it might be like fear can only last the current turn. It doesn't lap over to the next turn, or like maybe whatever it's going to be. So there might be alterations. So it's not quite as strong, but it still should be a strong enough team that like it's not going to lose. You know,
Mm-hmm.
in future iterations of the game. And you know other balances too, like for Termies. A major problem with Termies is they have no range card and it's a backliner. Well, if you just start using Gravelant more, you're going to realize a lot of Axies out there don't have range cards right now, and it's really bad. Um, so I would also expect, you should start seeing some tankier backliners that have that Gravelant just to either mitigate what's happening, but use Gravelant almost like a zero cost, where it's either going to be effective that game or it's not, because you don't necessarily need a zero cost in a backliner unless you're really facing a Termy. So that Gravelant kind of solves that problem, and then you just need to be able to manage your energy well kind of throughout the game to get to that final point.
Mm-hmm. So
Hey,
for a team, oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
no, go ahead, my friend.
And no, no, no problem. Go ahead. Since I was asking a little lot of questions, so it's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Dave, hey, this is Matt.
Hi.
So I guess a question that I have is, so staying in line, like, and I share your thinking as it relates to sticking with the peer axes, um, really being forward looking. But do you like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on some like the better like synergistic teams? Um, or types as it relates to that, because I think that again the peer Axie is a really good investment down the road for a number of reasons. But I guess the question that arises, like when you're thinking about PvP, like what can actually win? Like, I mean, I feel like there are a ton of really good combinations that have good synergy, but I'm finding it a little bit challenging to figure that out. I've got a few that have been really successful, but um, still, yeah. I mean, I'm happy to share those thoughts, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are there
So
too.
are you talking more in specifics of like making the best PvP team, or are you talking more on like an antenna team, or a Trump team, or
So,
a spear team?
so more so a team, or like a team that is comprised of like pure axes from specific classes, but that are like kind of like hidden meta. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it. So, for example, like one of I had a friend who recently got into Axie, and I helped him build a team, and it was a pretty standard plant tank, um, and then got a reptile with double deflect, so scaly spoon and bulwark with snake jar and Kataro, and then we got the double talk bird with eggshell, blackmail, and what is the last card? The zero cost card where you can do
Ghostlight.
120. Yeah, and like there's a lot of synergy there, but they're also like, I mean, there's a lot of saturation with the bird, but with the reptile, like I feel like that's a pure axie that like over time is going to, I feel like, become uh, more sought after. Um, so it's kind of like a good bet in terms of like breeding pure axes, like maintaining that lineage, but also like providing a lot of utility in arena. So I've been like theory crafting and try to figure out like what are other good synergistic builds,
Hmm.
pure
Okay,
teams.
I kind of get it now. So you're saying like what are some other hidden meta pure Axie teams that maybe aren't being used right now but could be
Yeah,
used in the future?
Yep, exactly. Of
Okay.
pure Axies. And like the key point there is that like I want to like super forward thinking, like make sure that I have like breeding lines established
Hmm.
and keeping pure Axies just consistently, but also maintaining high PvP play.
Yeah. So, so what I would say is you should go start looking at other cards that just aren't being utilized a ton, um,
Yeah,
and start to think about what's the weakness of a lot of Axies. So like a good example that I like to look at is like Arco and Acrobat for just beasts to allow the speed up. Where like Koi is easily one of the most
yeah,
popular tail parts for
fish. Yeah,
Aquas because of that speed up. But the difference here too, this just has to attack. Koi has to be comboed, which is something again like we don't talk about enough. And so if you can get Arco on a fast enough axis, which you kind of need to lead into the mech side, or
yeah,
have two of them to be able to use in a round, which isn't quite comboing, but you still have to have them maybe the two of the same card to get faster than a bird or the Aquas.
yeah,
But I think if you start looking at okay, but it also applies tankiness, and then what
yeah,
if you look at Timber, which I'm not sure
yeah,
where it is here either,
yeah. I've been playing around with that,
because
and it
just
is.
because just Timber alone is an 80 shield,
Yeah,
and now there is a lot of plants around in the game right now, but again, like does that plant point change to plants or reptiles? I don't know. Like
yeah,
those are the small
yeah,
changes that could or could not happen. So I always try to look at like unique things like that, like what changes, how do they evolve. I wouldn't necessarily just go to like the worst cards, and I don't necessarily agree with this card explorer. It's just that I know that these have the accurate damages and defense numbers.
yeah,
Um, so I'd start to look into consider like what are some of those things that are different that you like, and how do you start to utilize them in unique ways. Like I don't think potato leaf is utilized enough
yeah.
in the current game. Like I think it'd also be
I agree.
super interesting too. Like what if you put potato leaf on a beast? Not quite the
Yeah,
same thing, but if you're actually
yeah,
just
yeah,
looking
yeah.
for a PvP team. Um, I also think cloud could be utilized more for birds if you're
Yeah,
leaving things in last stand a lot. So I don't necessarily have the hidden metas to share right now,
yeah,
unfortunately, to help
yeah,
you. But I always have to look and think about some of those things because I think there are a lot
yeah,
of other things you could utilize and do more of too. Like I think Gilla's a really strong tail. I actually like Gilla as one of my favorite tails on a reptile.
yeah.
Um, that
I
I think
agree.
doesn't get enough love right now either. And Iguana too, I really like as well, but isn't utilized as much I think as it possibly should be. Herbivore right now is phenomenal because again, they're
Hmm.
just if you're gonna have a plant in that frontliner and you're gonna be doing 75 damage, which is the highest damage attack card for a plant. It would ruin some of your energy gain, but to go herbivore, cactus, hot, but I mean just those three in a
Yeah,
first round, you'd be dealing 330-ish to a plant.
yeah,
Like that's or
yeah,
maybe a little more than that, maybe like 350. That's pretty crazy damage. And if you got took damage at round two, you're gonna heal by 90 health. Um,
yeah,
so things like that I think are really cool to start considering. But yeah, I don't necessarily have a catch all for you, but I do think
yeah. No, I
Scaly
appreciate
Spoon,
it.
which is the reflect on the horn, has a lot of potential. I think the only problem with Indian Star or Bulkwork is that you don't have is right now it's only 40% versus the
Yeah,
50% like Scaly Spoon. I think if Indian
yeah,
Star moved to 50%, it would be a huge difference maker for that card,
yeah,
but right now it's not.
yeah. I mean, one of my thoughts are too that some of these underutilized cards, and again, this is super forward thinking, is that they most likely will receive something. And I understand that's not a guarantee, but just thinking about the dynamic of the game and how things change, um, I definitely see that being the case over
Right.
time.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Definitely. Well, what you guys got? Anything you want to talk about or any questions? Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I apologize for being quiet, Dave. I gotta take care of my infant at the same time. I'm trying to multitask.
You're good.
Or we can talk about the current market, or like since it has been so down for like I think this current week, I guess.
Hmm.
So, what do you think of the current market scenarios? Uh,
So I'm not surprised. I don't know if I said it here. I think I did. If not, I definitely said it in my mentorship group. But um, I'm not surprised. I basically told them, I was like, I think you have 2 to 3 weeks of high prices that are going to stay for a while. But as soon as someone figures out things that they like or don't like or whatever else is in between, you're going to see popular breeds, and it's only going to take them 2 to 3 weeks to get the breeds done. And if it's super, super forward-looking meta, then fine, it's still going to do really well. But if it's just repeating what's already being repeated by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 other breeders, I just don't think you're going to be able to sustain that. And I think you're starting to see that right now. Um, because if you're looking just even at the cost being paid for a lot of things in here, they're down a lot from what they were. Where the trending ones were doing about $800. Now they're only doing about 600. And if you go here to the breeding math, last time I checked, I think a 4 breed is about $500 still. Um, oh no, it's only 300. That's a lot less. My bad. Okay, so that's not terrible then for these top ones. Still getting 2x on your breed cost when it's coming out. Um, but the trending ones are basically break even, not that profitable. Um, so that's just something to consider. Like I think it's only going to become more in parity because the problem right now in the market is you only have people that are breeding it, and there's no real control trigger on it. Obviously, the 7 is a number for max breeds per Axie that has been a good number for a long time, but I wonder if that's going to get adjusted. And I don't know if anyone has an opinion on that, but I think 7 makes a ton of sense at the very beginning of the game because they had to scale the Axie economy to have it grow. You may still need to be 7 right now until we launch free to play or whatever, because right now there actually still is not enough Axies for how many players there are in the ecosystem. We can look at Jiho's chart. I don't know if he's still updating it with him kind of on the road. So right now we're at 2.6 million daily active users on Battlers. And so just if we go on 3 of those, it's basically like 7.5 plus 3, 7.8 million Axies we need. We're about to hit 10. Um, so there's about 4 Axies per user right now, um, which feels pretty good. I guess if you actually go to the full 2.8 though, you're basically break even, because you're about 600,000 below 9 million, so about 8.4 million or 8 point yeah about 8.4 million, or 8.5 million is what you need just for the amount of Axie holders we have right now. Um, so yeah, so I mean we just don't have a ton. Like we have basically an extra less than one extra Axie per player in the game right now. So when you do the math as to how many players could actually get to 10 Axies with how many Axies exist right now, it's super super small. The problem is we just don't have many holders versus scholars, and we're growing a lot faster rate of scholars than we are of new investors or holders of assets within the ecosystem in the game. So, um, yeah, that's something that I find quite curious. Like I think there's 2 things they could do. I think one, they could limit how many breeds are happening. I think 2, it'd be super interesting to do a tandem season bracket where you could allow only the people that own their assets, and they would earn a lot more AXS. So that way, okay, yeah, hey, anyone can play this other bracket, whether you're a scholar or not, or whatever it is. Someone owns the assets, and you can win AXS over here. Say the AXS prize pool, though, is 1,000 AXS. But over here in the same season, as long as you purchase the 3 Axies in your account, um, And I don't know how you verify that, I guess. Maybe you have to log in somehow through your seed phrase or something. I don't know how you'd be able to verify. Maybe to actually log in through Ronin versus logging in through a username passcode. If you log in through Ronin, you're approved as an owner, and you can now earn up to 10,000 AXS for a season because you're actually an investor and kind of a holder within the Axie ecosystem that we want to reward you more. And I think that could then start showing other people interest in the game, and maybe you earn more SLP, maybe you earn more AXS potential. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of other ways that you can actually encourage people to go spend $700-800 on Axies to actually go make a competitive team. But I think you also have a hard time too, where it's hard to make a really good first team with 3 Axies without having much knowledge on the game. And even if you watch a bunch of videos, it's still hard to know how to make a good team that can face most metas and most Axies across the arena, kind of throughout the entire ecosystem of Axie, especially as you level up.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So I have 53 scholars as of today.
Nice.
I've been trying to do a lot of pivoting, and as everybody knows, the market just went weird in the past 2 weeks. I've been trying to use the analyzer to try to find where some opportunities are where I can do some mini breeding farms to help kind of fund the growth of my scholar farms. And I'm not having a lot of luck understanding how to navigate the analyzer to look for the results that I'm trying to get to, which is basically finding something that has a small profit and a decent amount of Axies to where maybe I can sell a few of them a week. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. So I think part of that too, a really good site is just Axie Labs. It's a really easy one to go find. Well, there's Axie Labs, and then there's Axie Infinita XYZ. This is a really good spot to just kind of get some base knowledge of what's being used. So I think if you look at like a 7-day, and if it trends to what you're seeing on a 24-hour, what's popular and still being sold consistently. And so you're seeing here at the top, obviously, is the Dusk Terminator is still super popular, but they're only selling for 240. Which, if you're looking at the breeding calculator, if you bred 4 times, you're breeding for 280. So it probably doesn't make that much sense to do that one. So you probably want something that's going to be selling for closer to, I would say, $350, $400 if you're actually going to be able to do it. And so the challenge is once you start breeding out too much, it just doesn't come up that much. So the go to double anemone right now is selling for around 360. You have decent volume at 800. That's in the 24-hour. But you have 5,000 sold throughout the last 7 days. The price is going down a little bit, but it's still at 370. And so I'd try to look there for like what's going on around those price points and what looks good. If you want to say a little bit ahead of it, you could look to trending and see how much you're selling. But you see you're selling just a lot less of them. Obviously, this mech, the Axie Kiss Dual Blade Hair Hero, or it could also be Arco. You see that one up here as well. Are all still selling for over $500. So if you could start kind of getting a farm around that, might be an interesting one here too. You're also seeing a lot of this, the Kataro Indian Star, Sarasis, or the Scaly Spoon with Tiny Dino, becoming a very popular backliner because it's just very tanky. Like an Aqua can't kill it, a Bird can't kill it, a Beast has a hard time unless they have enough energy to kill it. So you're seeing that kind of come back in some popularity. But yeah, I would try to look into some of those things, like what's looking good there. Then I would come into the analyzer to kind of see, okay, what's the market for it further in depth? Where can I find the good Axies to actually buy and breed out, and go from there. So like, say we wanted to do, this Indian Star. I think that Matt said he was doing the Scaly Spoon one, so we'll do Scaly, Indian, Kataro, Tiny. So we'll go Reptile. No. This is Kataro. That's Horn. So yeah, it's Scaly. And then back is Indian Star. Alright. And so you can kind of come in here and just see average bred ETH. So it's selling for about $500. That feels pretty good. And and see if you can find some good Axies in here to actually buy them at. The other question too is like, what do you want to do from a breeding perspective, and how pure you want them to be. So obviously in D1 we want them at 6 out of 6. You might want them actually a little bit slower, which is an interesting thing there too. A good point about Kataro is if you match on speed, you don't get the benefit. So if you're 41 and the beast is 41, you're not going to get the benefit. Now currently a lot of beasts and mechs are outspeeding. And so there's also a thing there too. Oops. I guess we don't want that. No, it's fine. We can just keep it as reptile. But like a really good version of this as well is also a plant. It's not as fast, but it still does have the benefit because you're going to be slower than almost everything now with Katara and everything else like that. And if you have a plant, you'll be faster than the plant or the bug because you're going to be probably like 36 on speed if you're a pure reptile with a plant body, or 37 speed. So you'd beat out a bug or a plant there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I try to do mostly pure builds for the same exact reasons you stated. With me and my friends, when we talk about it, with V2 coming out and Landplay coming out, I think there's going to be an advantage. So right now, I've just been breeding out pure birds. You know, I started a plant aqua farm for my scholars, but obviously with the aquas getting nerfed, I'm thinking about moving over to like a plant bird aqua farm for it. But in this retail world, I was doing all right with a lot of things, but then the floor fell pretty hard, and now I'm like, man, what am I going to build now?
Yeah, I think how I've taken the approach is I can say confidently from back in the day when I was making my first scholars, I think about the first 30 scholars for me were profitable before I even brought on the scholar. Meaning that I could breed 4 times, I sold 2 Axies, and I paid for my entire SLP and AXS used for that Axie. Since AXS kind of went haywire, they've never adjusted the AXS to get to the right position, in my opinion. And so what's that's meant is that that breeding probability is not there anymore, and it's kind of gone. I think there's also just now too many breeders, not enough actual buyers. And so you're probably not going to get back to that position. Now, what I will say is how I've started to run it now is I've already invested a decent amount into the game, so I'm not really bringing in new cash. But what I'm basically doing is taking my SLP profits, buying and creating new scholars every single month. Because every dollar that you're investing in on a yearly basis should net you $3 in a year. Kind of on like a worst case scenario, depending on how you run your scholars. So, for me, the profitability is still there, but it's more of an investment in a long-run use case than it is like breeding profit right now. I think if you're going to be a breeder, you need to have, if you really want to be a breeder, I think you need to have relatively deep pockets. You need to be willing to take some risks, and when you go for it, you got to go fairly big into what you're going to be able to get out of it. And you need to be one of the few people kind of owning and cornering that market to actually do super well. Obviously, there's still a lot of builds you're seeing right now that are selling for $700-800, or even $600. You're getting 2x there. So I look to some of those as options, but you're still going to pay a premium for those Axies initially. Like, what do you do with those? Do you throw them into a scholar? If they throw them into a scholar, they're not, your scholarship's not going to be as profitable then too. Do you just resell them for a small loss? A lot of options there. I think for me, if I was to go in and do like say that Indian Star Tiny Dino build, I would just go in, breed some reptiles that maybe had similar stuff, or that I thought could come to that end dominant genes at the like maybe some would come out with those dominant genes. I would go through and breed those, and hopefully you didn't spend as much, so that you're, at worst case, you're still only putting about a 0.05, 0.06 expense of the Axie into a scholar. But if it comes out really well, then I'll sell that one, or maybe I'll use that for the next breeding round, and then I'll sell that round after that. But I think what you want to find that's going to do really well is you want to find Axies that are consistently being put onto teams and used quite consistently throughout as other people build more scholars. Or find some kind of semi-meta into this season and next season. That would be my best advice.
Yeah, it's funny. I bought the Bone Cell Bumpy for season 19. I bought a Reptile and an Aqua one. And I woke up this morning, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They nerfed it?
Right.
I was having so much fun with it.
I'm sure you were.
It needs to be nerfed. I get it.
Right. And so you can see here too, like this guy probably sold this pure for 0.24 ETH. He bred it. I'm assuming he bred it all 6 times, so that they're all about the same number, and resold it for 0.1. So the resale value is still there, but the difference there too is he now spent 0.15 ETH plus bred 6 times. And so the other thing you want to be tracking is if you actually are going to go into something like that, I would try to go look up, like a good way to do this is go to, let me refresh this page. Okay. So if I go to the marketplace on it, you can see what they're currently selling at, and I can actually go to all breed counts. Although ideally I want like some that are bred, right? And it can be just those parts. And I'm actually wanting. Ooh, doesn't load. Okay, so I'm gonna go highest ID and all, and I'm gonna go all. Okay, so now what you can see here is I like to see of all the highest IDs, so these are the ones that are most recently bred, how many of them are actually for sale again, or versus how many are just sitting there. And what you can bop around to too is, okay, if I look at this guy, he's already been bred 4 times and then sold. So I'm assuming this is all going to be sitting in Lunasi and 490. You can check real quick. Oh no, it's actually in him. So I guess he got a good deal on that one. Oh no, Lunasian bought it. Okay, so they are in Juraxic. So Juraxic already bred it 5 times, sold it for 0.1. So so you know Juraxic has a farm, and so some other cool things you can do here too is just go in Juraxic's account. The guy had this is like maybe a dust build. Okay, so he's building kind of twin tail Garish Worm, Poison Edition. That's not going to be fun to play. So you can just kind of come in here and see. So he has 10 pages worth. If you look at eggs, he only has 56. That's not terrible. But you can start to see, okay, how big are these farms going? And if there's already this many Axies coming out, how many actual buyers are there going to be on the back end of it? And how saturated is it currently, right? So if there's we know 6 is on this guy, we saw 5 over here. If I go back to just the actual page of that initial build, so there's only 59 for sale right now in total. So that feels like there's a pretty undersaturation for what you can do kind of coming to the market. Now, obviously, there's a ton being bred, so you do need to be aware of that. I would assume anything over, this is actually only 4 to 5, so I guess if we go down to 0, there'll be less or more. So there's 100 total. But if we're looking at 4 plus, which is kind of where I feel like they're already bred out, there's something happening there. You can start to assume, okay, if there's 59 at 4 plus, and if they all have to be split in half, so there's 30 there that are kind of bred because you need 2 parents to breed. Times 4, you get about 120 minimum coming out in the next 5 days. And if you actually just go to all, there's 500 of them. You might now have some concern. Okay, I don't know how far back you want to go, but if you go back to within the last you're still only at about 9 million. These kids are probably hatched. So if their kids are already hatched, then you're good. But again, what's happening to those kids? So it just starts to you start to see that oversaturation really push out quickly, just because there's so many breeders now. There's so many Axies out there. To actually have something really sustained for a long time is quite difficult unless there's a big market of a lot of people wanting to buy it.
Yeah, it's what I'm noticing. This has been helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. You just need to, forever what it was is in plants. Plants were always a hot butt cactus, serious pumpkin. We're always this an easy, guaranteed 0.07 ETH because everyone kind of wanted one. There just was never enough. And so what you kind of want to find, I don't know if there's actually a site on it. Maybe DJEC or Prophecy knows one. But it'd be interesting to see the most used Axies period and find out what that is. Or maybe most used Axies in the top 10,000 or something like that. Or most used Axies between 2,000 MMR and 1,400 MMR. I'd be really curious what that is because to me, those are the ones that are going to continue to be replayed. And I'm sure you're going to see some like the double anemone birds because they're kind of cheap right now. I'm sure you're going to see some of the double poison teams because they're a little cheap right now too. But what are kind of the consistent things? Because I think people assume that double poison is not going to last forever. I think people assume that double anemone bird's not going to last around forever. So you need to kind of try to find those Axies that really you do think are going to survive in a V2. But as you start chasing things, you always got to be aware when you're going to the market, how much are actually available? What am I dealing with here as kind of a total risk? And you can see here, so there's only 900 in total. So some other things to consider there too is if you're looking at percentages, so of this build, there's 900 total. We just said there's 100 for sale. And if we're looking at 4, so we're probably thinking another 60 to 80 are probably going to be born in a few days with another, probably another 40 more parents happening with 4 more, probably 4 to 6 more each. So you're looking at probably another 300 of these in the next, I'm going to say 10 days. And so all of those are from a breeder trying to sell them all. Like they're not going to go to scholars. And that's where I think a lot of the breeders are oversaturating in a lot of ways is they're not utilizing it for scholars. There's a lot of just pure breeders breeding to breed. And so if you're not in that game or focused on that, that can be a very tough thing to kind of beat someone out there if that's all they do and you're doing some scholars, you're doing some playing, you're doing kind of a combination of things in here too. But that ratio too, 104 of only 900 total for sale, that's a lot. That's a lot to be on the market.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been noticing with all the research I've been doing is it's hard to find a place where you can get enough profits because I'm trying to just breed so I can afford to build my scholars a little bit quicker. Like right now, I'm managing to make enough and roll things around to where I can do it 1 a day. I'd like to be able to do 3 or 4 a day and get my numbers higher there because I think it's more stable money in the long run. Personally, that's my opinion.
Then so then my advice there would be is if you're going to do that, I would just borrow money to your own scholarship farm. Like I would say if you have say $5,000, $10,000 in the bank account that's just doing nothing, loan yourself the 5 to 10 grand. This is not financial advice. Please don't just listen to me because it's me. But like if I were you though, and I really want to get my numbers up, you're gonna make that back. But by going to 100 scholars in a month, then you can just start collecting your SLP out, cashing yourself out, pay back your savings account or whatever else you had in there, and then go back to rebuilding and growing and doing other things from there too.
Yeah, looking at the way the market is, and I'm guessing it's going to be, like you said, probably not until the beginning of 2022 where things kind of make a little bit more sense in there. I think it's going to be down for a bit. It looks like because so many people are breeding, like you said, it's nuts.
Well, that's the thing. The market, if you want a good Axie, the market's not going to go much below a 4 breed cost. So if there's an Axie you think is just going to be a good Axie in the future, if you find it for below 0.06 or I'd say you can go to 3.048, if you find it below that, I would buy it. Like I did that with some aquas. I just saw some aquas that were pretty good. I was like, well, they're 0.035. I bought them because I was like, this is just stupid. It's a pure aqua. Some of them were 0 breeds too. Like they just were dumped. But if you can find anything below that, I think it's worth it because the other thing you got to think about here too, especially if it's below breed cost, there's still going to be an Axie grinder at some point or like a release system. And so that has to be worth at least the floor of an Axie of whichever you're going to be releasing it to. And once you release, and think about it, like once you release all of the shit Axies, like all the ones that are like 000 cost or just have no consistency or no damage or whatever it is, right? Where do you go from there? People aren't going to breed shit Axies. And so there's only, even if we have 10 million Axies, say at worst case scenario, 1 million of them suck. So say you for each one you release, you get, say, 10 tokens, whatever the tokens are for, and they're for upgrades. So if there's 1 million shitty Axies that are just going to be released no matter what, think about it. A, all of those now remove from 10 and 20 energy accounts. All of those remove the bad Axies that increases the market value of actually breeding good Axies. And now you only have 10 million of that token because no one else wants to release their Axies. And so I think that that token or whatever is going to come of that release system is actually going to be pretty profitable because there's only all at the same time there's only so many terrible Axies you just want to get rid of. And there's going to be that judgment call like, okay, I can have 10 energy or I can have 3 energy and release 7. What's better? And then you also, if you're any kind of a competitive player, you're going to want a few other additional Axies to throw into your pool and compete with. So I think, I've anytime I've seen like I just saw in the marketplace, here you have something like 0.03. If you find one that's even decent, to me it's like why not just grab it? Like, worst case, you can throw it into an account for energy, or you can just hold it in yours for energy if you play. And at best case, you can just release it later on, and you didn't spend a ton of money. And optimistically, I don't really see an Axie going below $100. Like I know it has at certain points, but I just really don't see it being able to sell for less than that because like these Axies right now are listed for less than the cost of them, which doesn't make a ton of sense. Like that's actually a really good Axie.
Yeah, I noticed that. It blows my mind how many people are putting their Axies up below the cost of what it is to breed them. I don't know how they're getting away with it or surviving.
The only way I do is if they are a scholar manager as well, and they actually, I think it's pretty solid. And they actually earn all their SLP from their scholars. But at the same time, and that because their SLP is technically free, or they play a lot and they're just using the SLP they earn, so it's just really their time versus having to go buy SLP. But at the end of the day, they don't have. Sorry, this is actually a pretty solid bird. I don't know why that's 0.03.
Yeah, I think you helped me make some decisions. Like I have enough in my inventory. I have enough liquidity in my Ronin wallet to where I can probably scale up to 100 scholars rather quick. But I've been trying to balance it out a little bit, you know what I mean? And bring some profits in. But it's starting to be a bit of a struggle now with the way the market looks.
Well, that's where I'm at. I'm not taking any profits. I still haven't collected profits from any of my scholars. All the profits I took from breeding earlier in my Axie career are all into scholars right now. The other thing they're in is into other stuff. So I have some items. I have land, so like stuff like that. Like I've been debating too. To your point, like do I just sell land, go ham on scholars for a month, and come back and buy land after I cash out other SLP next month? It wouldn't obviously be enough to do that. But maybe I take it out, it only costs me, if I sell my land for 15 ETH or so, cost me 2 ETH, and go back and buy land again in a couple months or buy a slightly less good land. So there is options there too, but it doesn't. Some of that doesn't make sense. There's a lot of illogical thinking, and I think also too, to your point though, what I think is happening here is someone bought this, so they bred this, and I guess they didn't like it, but they bred this. They're probably just trying to collect their money back. Maybe I guess it actually wasn't scaled down, but it also is a part of opportunity cost. So like, what else could they do with 0.03 versus have this Axie sit in their wallet? I don't know. Or maybe they needed to go buy SLP and AXS, but like they bred it 4 times or 3 times. I don't know. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, I've been, I'm almost full time playing this game at this point because I work for myself anyways. And I've been looking at the market, man, for the past 3 days, like for hours and hours, and I'm baffled on where to pivot to, and that's why I love being part of this membership because I look for all the extra information I can get from people. And like I said, I think you've helped me a little bit. I think I want to kind of take some of my farms. I'm going to refocus to putting out more scholars. And what you just said, because I'm not taking any money out of the game right now, and I have a lot of money in the game too.
Right.
So I think I'm just going to go ahead and maybe double up on pulling more scholars in because it seems like it's a little bit more constant, safer bet at the moment.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is if you're looking at the big picture, play to earn games are not going to go anywhere negative. I think in the whole ecosystem, and I'm very bullish on Axie being here for a while. But like, if even if
Yeah,
Axie
me
starts to
too.
fail, you could potentially start to pivot out of Axie, move half your scholars from Axie, and go buy stuff in Star Atlas, or go buy stuff in Ember Sword, or go buy stuff in Splinterlands, or whatever else. Like, there's plenty of other play or Peg Axie is I know is one that's getting kind of some notoriety. So there's plenty of other options too to go earn. There might be different earning rates. But there still is going to be other play to earn ecosystems that, for the scholars that we have right now, I'm sure they'd be willing to try other games. And they could also potentially double up on games because they can't play two Axie accounts, but they can play one Axie, one Ember Sword, one Splinterlands, one Guild of Guardians, whatever else they are too. But hey, anyone have one last question? We're running out of time. My wife just told me dinner's ready, so I don't want to miss out on her. But anyone have one last question they want to ask? No? Oh, you guys are pretty easy then. You sure?
Well, thank you very much for your time, man. I do appreciate it, and it was really helpful, and you clarified some things in my own brain. So thanks a lot.
Hell yeah. And I turned off I turned off a lot of my DMs from a lot of servers. I'll see if I didn't do it here. I think I allow them from here too. But if you guys do have questions, don't hesitate to just send me a DM. I'll try to help out if I can. Um, yeah, okay, I put it on. So if you want to DM me from the server, you can if you guys have questions. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for the questions and conversation. And good luck, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks. See ya.